Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. This week's text, and I think it was really something I'm really excited to hear how you guys responded to it, is from manipulation to love. And this rest for the weary text in Matthew 11:28 through 30 is probably one many of you have heard. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. I almost feel that this chapter is walking on a sacredness that cannot be explained, because it's exploring or reflecting on the love that is rooted and begins in Jesus Christ. And it's, if you read through the chapter, you know there's a part that the Christ in me dances with the Christ in you. And that sense of true, I guess you could say true mourning together, is something that it caused me to look at some of these passages a little different. There's one later on I will share. But that dance, that intimate dance that was described in this chapter, it was interesting for me, because I would read like up 2 or 3 pages and then I'd get really tired. And I'd fall asleep. And then I'd wake up and I'd read 3 or 4 more pages and I'd get really tired. I mean, there's so much energy, I think, for me in this chapter that I enjoyed reading, and power I felt. That it just kept me dancing. And one example happened this morning to me. So I'm thinking about Palm Sunday, and I was talking with Sarah about, or sending a message to Sarah, how I'd like to have a more subdued Palm Sunday. And if you remembered a few sermons ago, I was talking about how Palm Sunday everybody was excited because they thought Jesus was coming the way that they thought Jesus should come. They were thinking he was the Messiah that was going to get rid of all the Romans, and they were going to be the ones that are in charge. You know, is that kind of a sense? And so in Palm Sunday is that energy. And then you have Jesus, one of the first thing he does is he goes into the temple and he kicks everybody out. And says, this is a house of prayer, and you've turned it into a den of thieves. And so begins the transformation of Holy Week, to help people see that Christ came not for earthly glory, for an earthly kingdom, but to establish the heavenly kingdom. And this chapter that I walked through, that dance felt very alive to me as I was walking through it myself. I think to kind of get started here, if you don't mind, Sarah, is maybe, as I detoured for a second there. So as I was thinking about having more subdued, there is this song, A Gentle Healer. Gentle healer came into our town today. He touched blind eyes and the darkness left to stay. But more than the blindness, he took their sins away. The gentle healer came into our town today. And so that's, and I hope that Palm Sunday there's going to be 3 incredible voices singing that instead of me. But that song, I was kind of letting it sit within me throughout feeding the cattle this morning. And there's this last part of it says, the gentle healer left our town. I just turned around and saw him gone away. But some folks in town who followed him, they say that the gentle healer is the truth, the life, the way. And if it works out on this Palm Sunday, what I'll ask us to do is we'll have the music being sung. But then when it gets to that point, some folks in town who follow him, they say that the gentle healer is, and then I want like everybody in the audience say, the truth, the life, the way, in whatever tone comes out of your mouth. Lori, it doesn't matter. Whatever tone comes out of your mouth, we're going to sing it. And this morning as I was sitting there, and I just, yesterday I finally got through that chapter, that truth to life, the way I just started bawling. As I'm there, just the cows around me, so no one saw me crying. But, the truth to life, the way just kept hitting me so deep this morning. And I think that reading through that chapter was one of the things that caused that. So I would like to start with this, or we start with that, but I'd like to, Sarah picked the song, Breathe on Me, Breath of God. I think it's just a great song for this chapter. And I think the breath of God is just something that we're going to be breathing in as we think about this chapter, but also it's going to be a breathing out in a sense that it is going to be mixed with the other breaths of God that's present. And if you can get your mind a little bit down that road, that would be wonderful. Okay, yep. Thank you so much, Sarah, for picking that song. That was wonderful. Well, you kind of shared how this chapter, I shared how it really affected me, and I have passage here to share, but I was wondering, as some of you encountered this chapter, if there was anything that really stuck out to some of you that had a chance to read it, and that you'd be willing to share and give us a little insight on. If there's any verses or any readings in the first 3-4 pages that stuck out to anybody that they want to lift up for the group.
Well, when I saw it, yeah, on 73, all the good that you will do will not come from you, but from the fact that you have allowed yourself in the obedience of faith to be used by God's will.
Oh, that's an awesome. That James Force quote. Right at the beginning, I know there was a part that just really talked about that compassion that leads to that. The second paragraph at the beginning at 67 was something I put a star at. To live with compassion means to enter another's dark moments. It is to walk into places of pain, not to flinch or look away when another agonizes. It means to stay where people suffer. Compassion holds us back from quick, eager explanations when tragedy meets someone we know or love. And then going right into what you shared there too, Harley, yeah. Just allow yourself to be obedient of faith, to be used by God's love. It's compassion. I put this at the top of my chapter, and I want to ask this question, listening to what Arlie's part that he thought had some power, and then listening what I shared. Compassion versus worrying. Is there a difference if I share those two words between compassion and worry?
Yeah,
Why?
worry gets you nowhere.
Worry gets you nowhere. Why would you say that? Sorry.
Because I'm pretty good at it and it gets me nowhere.
Worry is being scared of the pain, but compassion is being with the person in pain.
I don't know where she gets this.
Amazing.
Worry is being scared of the pain. Compassion. Say, what's that again?
Compassion is just staying with the person in pain.
Staying with the person. Would you agree with that, Lori, when you're thinking about worry and compassion?
Yeah.
Worry is the attempt to retain control when you're really not in control.
Oh, there's a good point.
Compassion is giving up the control to God.
Oh, that's a
And
very good
just
point.
allowing that person, whether it's you or someone else, because you can be compassionate with yourself too. Give yourself grace. It's allowing God to just work in their life, even if right now, this second, it doesn't look great. It's about the control. You don't have control. Not really. Control isn't a word.
Well, you don't always have control and compassion though either.
No, compassion is giving up control, though.
Yeah.
You know, it's surrendering the
Yeah,
control.
that's my point.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Worry is about trying to hold on to that control. If you're compassionate, you're giving it up.
That's a good,
You're
wow.
existing for someone else, so to speak.
It reminds me of the symbolism between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is climbing down into the hole with the person, but empathy is not being in there, but still,
Seeing?
yeah, helping. And so I was kind of equating empathy with compassion and sympathy with worry.
So sympathy would jump in the hole and try to fix the situation, but you're stuck in a hole, you both are stuck in a hole, you can't get anywhere.
Exactly.
Whereas empathy is just kind of being on that edge, saying, I am present. What do you need? You know, because maybe, like we say, as we've been walking this whole thing, grief isn't something we should seek to cut short. You know, grief is something we sit in, but we don't let it control us. We don't let it overpower us, but it's somewhere to be as a part of discovering the God present. So in some ways that empathy is seeing that God is the one present, pulling that person out of the hole, not you're pulling the person out of the hole. I'm trying to recognize that presence. Any thoughts on that? I'm going to share a lot of spots here. Compassion versus worries. Empathy. On that page that Arlie shared, I thought the beginning kind of talks a little bit with maybe what we were trying to talk about, that worrying as control. At the end of our craving for acceptance, I thought the author, Henry Nouwen, was really giving us a good way of thinking how easy it is to want to be a part of a pain, to heal yourself, or be a part of a pain so that you become a focus. That's the danger. One of the big dangers is don't become the focus of the pain. Don't become oh, I have all this wisdom, so you should be looking at me. Do you remember his little example when he talked about the woman who had lost her house, kind of in the beginning? And how she just said, I am useless to anybody. And he's like, no, you're not. Your grandkids love to come see it, you know. And the person was giving all that, and he didn't let her grieve. He didn't let her just sit in that grief that she was so hungry for. He almost made her feel guilty about grieving, or feel guilty about, you know, and thought he was giving her great wisdom. And sometimes it isn't about recognizing those things. It's about, yeah, I'm here so you can sit in that grief. Not that I have to pull you out of it and tell you why you shouldn't be in it. You know, I thought that was a great personal example he shared. At the end of page 72, he was talking about this craving for acceptance. And he said, this kind of activism gathers merit badges. It is motivated by guilt, by the feeling of being indebted, by the sense of having to earn righteousness or favor from God or others. Activism ultimately places our own unmet longings at the center of our efforts. It therefore does not help others in a wholesome way. This forms a tragic circle. The more we try to justify ourselves, the more we collide with our inability to do so. We're talking about this critique of trying to be a fix-it person.
You really need to jump back to 72 and read the other two also there.
The other two.
There's 3 different ways that we tend to do this.
The first, yes, that is a good point. Would you share that, Larry?
First, we have difficulty because of our intense need to be justified, a need rooted in our craving to be liked and accepted by the significant or not so significant people in our lives. And then the second one is we end up doing things for others for the sake of doing, for the sake of ourselves. This kind of activism gathers merit badges and so on, like you talked about.
Yep, thank you for clarifying that, Larry.
And then the third one we read.
Yep. Need to be justified. Thinking that you want to be in a right relationship with God. So that's a righteousness. And a right relationship is not a from here looking at the way they justify, it's not a justified relationships. You know, like a justified relationship is saying, I belong with you, God, because I have done these good things in my life and I have shared these with various people. Whereas a right relationship is, I cannot do anything apart from you, God. And where he talked later on, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. That's where that right relationship with God begins. I cannot do anything apart from you. I am nothing in your presence. But your love has turned me into everything. You see me as everything. You're the one that gives me value, not me. And that's when you walk with Beatitudes, and it speaks a lot towards that truth. Thank you, Larry. Anything else at the beginning that jumps out to anyone before we keep walking through this chapter? Talk about the competitiveness. 74, 75, anything jumping out to anyone?
I liked where it said you paid attention without intention. Which kind of goes back to that, not trying to make it okay for people all the time, because you're not actually making it okay. What he made it not about him. He made it about them.
almost like you want to have a tattoo that's on the inside of your eyelids when you shut your eyes, says, I'm not trying to fix this person. You know, I just want to be there. I want to see the God within them and celebrate that. And I know on 76 he talks about the loneliness and aloneness and twin agents of good.
On 75, the one I liked was, think about the people who've influenced you. And you know, I remember it as probably both my grandparents and even Aunt Will and all them other people that, you know, they don't need to influence you by what you say, it's just how they act.
Yeah.
You know, there's no, you know, they radiated, like it said there, they radiated that inner freedom where you don't really have to say much, it's just, you learn just by what they are and what they do.
Oh, yeah, that's a great paragraph there. Think about the people who have most influenced you. When I remember them, I am always surprised to discover that these are people who did not try to influence me, who did not need my response. Instead, they radiated a certain inner freedom. They made me aware that they were in touch with more than themselves. They pointed to a reality greater than themselves, from which and in whom their freedom grew. This centeredness, this inner freedom, this spiritual independence had a mysterious contagiousness. Thank you, Larry, or thank you, Arlie, for bringing that up.
One thing I thought of when you reading it is those people all have a real honesty about them. There's never any, you always knew where they stood and what they believed.
And pretty much never a bad word about anybody or anything.
Right.
Super. Very good points, very good points. Before we get to this next section, I want to read, there's another story in here, in Scripture, that caused me to look at it in a different way after reading this chapter. And I kind of want to set it out there and see what it may do to you without me sharing how it affected me. It's the Mary and Martha story. As Jesus and his disciples went on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. So how does that passage, when you're reading this chapter, if you've read this chapter, if you've heard some of the things we just shared, does that passage take a different or new or a meaning that you've always had? And it's the way it is.
So did they live together? Because it said it was Martha who opened her home, but Mary was doing all the work.
No, Martha opened her. Mary was the one sitting at Jesus' feet.
Yeah.
Martha was trying to do all the physical work. So Martha must have been the owner of the house, I suppose you can say, or the main person of the house.
Okay.
But they're sisters, so maybe they shared the house together. Anything jump out as you think about the Mary and Martha story after hearing about this word of compassion, of being with?
called it worrying about those things, they still need to get done.
Sounds like someone who worries about those things.
I don't worry about it, I just do it.
I don't think you can put Martha down because she cared. And that's her way of serving.
Come to me all who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. When Cindy was in Pennsylvania, I sent her a picture. I wait a couple days before I wash dishes.
Jacob didn't do it?
He helped out. I mean, Jacob and Jaylee did awesome that week too. This was a good couple days of dishes. And so I finish them and I take a picture, and they're all clean and they cover the whole counter. And sent it to her. See, take care of it. And I come home and every day they're clean. You know, we have different ways of approaching things, I guess. You know, as I was thinking about this Mary and Martha story, it does give us a challenge to remember, you know, nothing comes before God. You know, yes, there are dishes to do. Yes, there are things that need to be done to prepare for people who are visiting. But you're also got to say, God, you're here. It's almost, let me throw it out this way. When somebody comes to your house, what do you think is the first thing that they should experience? The God in you greeting the God in them, or you worrying about having everything ready, perfect for them? I'll just throw that out.
Is this a trick question?
No, it's not a trick question. You don't have to answer it. You can sit on it. The work can be still done, but I think the first thing that I want to challenge you to think about, and myself, is the God in me greeting the God in you. The love that Christ has in me greeting the love that God has in you. Saying hello. You know, it was like on this past Sunday, I so enjoyed worship. And I think part of it was some of you guys had your shots, so you gave me a hug. You know, and felt comfortable doing so. And I think that just for the God in you said hello to the God in me at the beginning of worship this past Sunday. And I was very thankful for that. It was just a good way to start worship for me. You know, and so.
Well, I think part of it is intention. Martha was worrying about all the things that she had to do instead of finding joy in doing the things that she was doing. There's a big difference.
So in some ways, Martha wanted to take the burden that she thought Mary should be having and say, okay, Mary, you should have the same feeling and burden as me, instead of sitting with the joy that is in that? Or what, help me out.
Well,
She approached it with anger
yeah.
rather than approaching it with the spirit of service and giving.
Yeah.
Like, you can do all the good deeds in the world, but if you're doing it with the wrong attitude, you're not really doing good.
Very good point.
We don't know the relationship between Mary and Martha, and maybe Mary never did step to the plate and help. And Martha was like, oh my gosh, we have this honored guest and you're not gonna do
You're
a
still
thing,
not stepping
and
up.
you're still not stepping up.
Yeah.
You got Mary Marthas in the church too, and
Yeah. Think about last week's conversation. Okay? And last week, you know, or maybe it's 2 weeks ago, I was sharing the event like I am afraid of being a millstone pastor. You know, it's better a millstone be hung around your neck, you thrown in the depths of the sea, than causing one of these ones who believe in me to fall or to stumble. And I think it was Sarah, because I think it came from over here, kind of shared, you're kind of a link. You know, you may not understand what you did, and even if you did it wrong, God's still going to use it. Is that kind of, am I kind of summing it a little
Yeah,
bit?
you never know what effect you're having.
You never know what effect you're having.
That's very true.
You know.
You might find out years later that you changed someone's life,
Yep.
And you may never find
or you
out.
may never find out.
You might not see the harvest from the seed you planted.
Yeah, but it's about intention. Like, God working through you isn't about you, it's
No.
about God. And you just do what God tells you to do, and that's all you can do.
That's right.
And make sure you recognize that it's not out of selfish desire. Like I would kind of, when I did counseling, the intention was the thing I tried to communicate to a couple. Because, you know, someone would say, well, I'm doing all the right things. You know, I still don't know why the person isn't responding. I'm doing everything and so forth.
I didn't mean to leave you with the idea that
No.
every time something went on, something went bad.
No,
But
no.
there's been other cases where that's not true.
Yeah.
But in many of the cases, if a person is where they are, that's where they want to be.
Yeah, well, that might be the case. And I always would tell them, I am great at rough openings. I mean, if you have a wall and you need a rough opening hole, I can destroy that wall well. You know, I would share that with them. And I said, now, am I making a rough opening thinking all the things that I'm going to ask this person to do for me? Or am I making the rough opening as a gift? You know, and that's, I mean, what you do it in your house is you opened it up and it's a gift. And that's maybe something that's challenging, because a gift is unconditional. You know, we are called to be God's gifts to others. What we do is an unconditional offering, and it's up to them how they receive it. And like I said, like you said, it's a seed. There's a seed planted. You know, there's a song, and I wish I could grab it out of thin air, but it's a person singing and coming to heaven, and then seeing people coming up to that person weeping, saying, because you did this, this is where my life went, and now I'm here because of that.
Ray
because
Boltz.
You did. Ray Boltz, yes, it's a Ray Boltz song.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray Boltz. Look it up. Alexa, play "Thank You" by Ray Boltz. That'd be awesome if that happened. I bet you when Jacob's editing it might happen. Okay,
I'm not sure you're loud enough for that to happen.
we'll see. We might get people calling us. Oh yeah, that's awesome. Number 82 I found here, we'll keep going, is a section. It's when solitude meets solitude. And so this really gets that, it starts walking down the point when the God, the Christ, the God alive in me greets the God in residence in you. That's in this section. And I find myself referring to it as we've been walking through here. Healing encounters and deep communion with others come about from persons who have experienced at least a taste of love, offering love to another. My eyes are just getting all watery upside. Can you read that? Can you just read that paragraph, love?
Which one?
Just the top one, the first one. It started at the beginning, not where I started.
And here we gain clues about what it means to live in a community as a person of faith and compassion, one who can genuinely help the hurting and bring love to others suffering. For community is more than people living together. It is also solitude greeting solitude. Healing encounters and deep communion with others come about from persons who have experienced at least a taste of love, offering love to another without manipulation or subtle games.
Okay. All right, unpack that for me. There's a lot in that paragraph. Anybody want to make that, or do we let people sit with it? Put pause and sit on that. Because there's a lot in that, just that
Read that sentence.
one paragraph. Could anybody respond to that? At least a taste of love, offering love to another, without manipulation or subtle games. As you know, when Arlie was sharing earlier about people, thinking about the people in his life that just had that presence, that powerful presence. Could anyone possibly expand on that with this thought? You know, how that maybe that has transformed you or helped you in a way that has helped you become the person that you are?
It's really about sacrificial love. I guess that's what I'm reading. Yeah, like what you experience hopefully with your parents.
Doesn't it go back to page 74 and 75 where it says, compassion in its fullest sense can be attributed only to God. It is the central message of the gospel that God, who is in no way in competition with us, is the one who can be truly compassionate. So isn't that what that's saying? That
Yeah. 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 Contributed only to God. And I think if you remember in that section, you know, in Is Compassion Possible, you know, Henry now recognizes, you know, that on the outside it looks like an impossible task to have the compassion of God being a sinful person. You know, there's that kind of that presence of that in some of this reading that, but he takes it another step and he says, yet God has chosen to dwell in you. Because God has chosen to dwell in you, that compassion is possible if it doesn't begin through you. You know, if it is a emptying, if it is that, like the song said, if it is God breath, the God in me breathing upon you, that presence like that. And the danger is not to get arrogant about it. Oh, you should do this because the God in me told you to do it. You know, that is not probably right, okay? You know, that I would be very surprised if there's truth behind a statement like that. You know, so there's that humility. You got to keep being willing to say, I am poor in the spirit. You know, I can't do this except for God doing it through me. And almost as soon as you, and Henry kind of warns, as soon as you think you can do that, that means you've lost the God present in you. Or you're not responding to the God present in you. It's just such a fine line, you know, that he keeps warning you about, but also wants you to know the truth that God he's sharing his love through you. He's doing the impossible that you kind of feel, to be honest, seems impossible. Anything else that jumps out? I have a star at the bottom of 83. It says, such is the victory of the cross. Love is stronger than death, and the community is the place where we continue to let the world know there is something to rejoice about in this new life together, something to be ecstatic about. That is, to move out of the static place of death and declare that human beings need not to be afraid. Gratitude springs from an insight, a recognition that something good has come from another person, that it is freely given to me and is meant as a favor. And at the moment this recognition dawns on me, gratitude spontaneously arises in my heart. I need no longer always manage and muster support for my cause. You know, Now jump on the other side of this bandwagon we've been talking about. Instead of being the one expressing the God in you to the God in them, be the one receiving the God present in another. That's what that kind of that end is. That is that the joy of the cross, receiving what God has offered you through another. And knowing that it doesn't have any strings attached to it, knowing that it's done spontaneously, knowing it's done with a genuineness of heart. Can you just rejoice in that? And I think that's one thing, doing pastoral ministry that really I had to learn is to learn to say thank you. It's thank you. It's not right for me. Oh, I don't deserve this. Please don't do that. No, it's just say thank you. Thank you. When someone loves them, you just thank them. You don't have to say, oh, I don't deserve that. But I've seen that happen so often here. That not the non-thank you, but that gratitude, that joy, that using this gift to celebrate life. And we're in this together. That's what makes it so wonderful. When I hear something that you have done that has served the Lord in a powerful way, I just rejoice because I'm a part of the community that you are celebrating, that you are serving, that you are helping. And what a joy. What a joy. Anything else later on in the chapter? I didn't mark anything else for me that really stood out besides what I just shared. The last chapter, the end of enemies. There's some good stuff in there, but nothing I could really concise or grab a paragraph and say, oh, this paragraph really sums it up. So, anything in that?
That first line on page 86. The message of the gospel brims with compassion, with a love that willingly suffers with, even with those we do not naturally like. That's
Yeah.
the hard part. You really like what someone is doing, but yet you still need to have compassion.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Anything else jump out from this for anybody? That's part. Suffers with, willingly suffers.
Willingly is important.
Yes.
Key word. Also the hardest one.
Let's close in a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, as we have either just started walking down this road or have heard of this path that you call us upon, or have been seeking ways of walking it all our lives, we know that whether we're at the beginning, in the midst of, or towards the end, we should always see it anew. We should always feel like that newborn child being embraced by a loving parent for the first time, and to feel all those senses that a newborn would feel, and the joy that is just seeping into them through another's embrace. And Lord, we thank you for those who willingly walk our suffering with us out of joy, not out of guilt, out of a love of you, not a love of the self. And so we just want to rejoice as you continue to reveal these things to us, as you challenge us to walk these walks, and as your word transforms in our hearts and we see things anew every single day. May you bless those present here and those listening, so that they may continue to be a blessing to everyone they meet. Amen.